we go. All right, I think we're live now. All right, yeah, cool. We are good to go. Grab your Red Bulls. Welcome, Kim Adams Hair Design. Thanks for joining. This week is today is Wednesday, March 26th. This is our live Q&A for this week. If you guys have any questions, type them in the chat. But I actually thought I could do something a little bit different. My name's Alex, by the way. I realize most of you guys may not know who I am, so I thought I might do something a little bit different this week. I will get to the questions here in the chat in a second. So if you have any questions that come up during this call, feel free to just type them in the chat, and I will get through it once I finish my my usual rant here. But one thing I wanted to kind of get to know you guys a little bit better this week, and I realized that a lot of you guys probably have no idea who I am. And for those of you that do, you may not even know my my background. So I thought that I could give you guys a little bit of a background just so you understand me a little bit better. I have been a licensed barber since 2014. I started barber school in 2013. I went to school down in Tampa, and then when I graduated, I moved to Jacksonville, Florida, where I started working at a barber shop in Jacksonville, and then eventually opened my own shop. But I wanted to take you really at the mindset behind some of the decisions I made, because before I even started barber school, I was actually in college, and it's funny because I actually just found my my college degree. It was laying on the ground. It was it's right here. You see, I got a bachelor of applied science, supervision and management. Pretty much useless degree. But when I was in college, I had a part-time job as a server, banquet server, and I was realizing that a lot of the people that I was working with also had college degrees, and we were making the same. So I started to get this sense that maybe a college degree isn't going to help me that much in terms of my earning potential. So once I had that realization, and I also had this realization of wow, anybody can come off the street and just replace me. And that was not a good feeling. That kind of hurt my ego. But honestly, that's the truth. Like, if you are working in a no skill type of job, like a restaurant or really anywhere, where anybody with a couple hours of training can come in and replace you, you're always in danger of losing your job. So I didn't like that feeling. So I knew I wanted to be a business owner. So the idea was I need to learn a skill, and then I wanted to own a business because at the time, this was like 2019. No, this was 2009. Yeah, 2009 when I started having these stuff. No, yeah, it was around 2009, 2010. It took me a few years to actually work up the courage to go to barber school. But I wanted to have a business that was recession resistant, because that was what was happening at the time. We were in a huge recession. The government wouldn't admit it, but we were. And I wanted to have a business that was recession resistant. So I looked at all the businesses on that list, and it was like restaurants, movie theaters, and I saw a barbershop. And I was like, oh shit, yeah, I could do a barbershop. So I was actually going to do a barbershop and just open a shop and not even cut hair. And then I realized, I was like, well, somebody actually talked me into getting a license, because they were like, well, if you're just going to be the owner, then you're going to be dependent on like all your barbers, and what are you going to do if everybody quits? And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. So I ended up going to barber school just for that reason, because somebody convinced me, even though I did not want to cut hair. I went to barber school just in case, like, somebody ends up leaving, like my whole team left, I could still keep the shop open. And it turns out that's happened, right? Where I've had pretty much the entire team leave at the same time, and I was able to keep the shop open, you know? Like, it sucked, but it ended up being good advice. So I started the barbershop with the intention, the end goal was to be a business owner. Like I never wanted to cut hair. So I think that that's kind of what makes me a little bit different than some other barbershop owners, because the business was my end goal from the beginning. Like I only got a barber license just so that I could, if anybody quit, I'd be like, okay, well, I guess I'll do it, until I got time to hire somebody else. And then it, so we, and then I, when I graduated barber school, I went and worked for somebody else for about a year, and it was just coincidence, but it also turned out to be, I don't really believe in manifestation, but I had this plan when I was in barber school, because I was working with people that were opening up barbershops, like students, and their shops were failing, Like before they had even graduated barber school, they were opening up barbershops. And I took that as a lesson, like maybe I should go work for somebody else first before I go and do this, because it seems like it's a lot harder than what I thought it would be. And it turns out it is. It's way harder. And I'm still learning. So I decided I'm going to go work for somebody else for a minimum of 1 year, and then maybe I'll open up a barbershop. And it turns out that it was like almost exactly a year. It was like 13 months where I got the opportunity to open the shop that I currently have. I found it on Craigslist. Somebody was putting it up for sale. They just opened it and they didn't want it. They didn't want it anymore. So it was only like 6 months old. So I ended up buying it and built it into what it is today. In 2015, we opened. We ended up moving to a new location in 2017. From there, it really exploded. And then in 2020, pretty much the worst time in history to open a barbershop, is when we opened our second location. And it took about I want to say maybe 4 years to get to the point where it was at least breaking even, right? And now it's actually profitable. So think about that. And that's why I try to caution people before expanding, because like, are you sure? Like, can you afford to wait? Maybe it won't take you, like I opened a barbershop in the middle of COVID. So that maybe it took like 2 or 3 times as long as it should have, but it still took like a long time. And some of that was just ignorance, like me not knowing what to do, like because running 2 locations is not twice as hard. I would say like probably 10 times harder than running 1. So I think it was just ignorance on my part. Timing was also awful. But COVID, I think, taught us all a lot of lessons, me especially. I can't speak for you guys. I think it definitely just accelerated what was already going to happen. So the people that went out of business probably were going to go out of business anyways at some point. It just kind of sped it up. In most cases, I'm sure there's some special cases, but I know in our case, like I don't blame the fact that it took a long time to get to profitability on COVID. Like it would have been hard without COVID. It's just that was just like the cherry on top, that just made it that much harder. So, but I believe that if you owned a barbershop during COVID and are still around operating, well, I think you should pat yourself on the back for that, because a lot of people didn't make it. And they used COVID as an excuse. But like I mentioned, I think it really just exposed the weaknesses in a lot of people's businesses. So I don't know that a COVID will happen again in our lifetime. Hopefully it won't. But there will be other disasters and things that could affect you. So I don't see any reason why we can't just continue to try to remember the lessons from COVID so that you can survive these things as they come. Like most people, I think I read that most businesses don't survive past 1 year. Of those that survive, most don't make it past 5 years. And then of those, most don't make it to 10. So basically, in other words, if you make it to 10 years in business, you're in a really, really small club. It's like 1% of businesses or something make it to that point. So in November, we're actually going to hit 10 years. So that'll be a really exciting anniversary. So yeah, but I think that a lot of businesses fail not necessarily because they had a bad idea or the owner was doing anything wrong. It's just that they just ran out of money. It simply comes down to that. Undercapitalization is the fancy term for it. So if you're going to open a business of any kind, right, you need to have some money saved up, because it's not going to be like you open the doors and you're just making money from day one. Like, because you're also going to have expenses from day one. Like, yeah, you get to keep, or at least you get the top line, like what you were paying in commission or booth rent to the owner or whatever. You get to keep all that, but now you have new bills that you didn't have before, right? So it takes a long time, I think, to even get back to where you were, what you were making when you were at your previous place. It might take years. Maybe you'll never get there. I don't. So don't even think about opening a barbershop or any type of business if you don't have, I would say, at least 6 months of savings for both yourself and for your business, because just got to treat it as like, this is going to lose money from day one. Like, and I don't recommend getting a loan, because you're going to have to pay that back, right? Pretty much immediately, whether you're making money or not. And then you end up in a worse financial position if your business doesn't make it, because you still got to pay that loan back. So yeah, I mean, so now we're here. We're doing millions of dollars a year. We're probably going to open more locations here in the future. This year, I'm just focused on just putting money in the bank to get ready for that, staffing up, getting all of our barbers fully booked, and just getting them to make the most amount of money possible, because that's honestly, like, I realized the other day, and I'm going to get to questions here in a second, but my goal is to build a business a barbershop where clients love to go to get their hair cut, where barbers love to work and make great money, and then document the process for you guys so that you guys can see you can do it too. So that's my mission. I kind of realized that just the other day. It's kind of what's been driving me really since the beginning, but I've only, like, just a few days ago actually, like, was able to articulate it in words. Like, that's actually those are the three things that drive me. I want clients to love getting their hair cut. I want them to look forward to it. I want the barbers to be able to make more money with me and my business than they can make anywhere else. Even going out on their own and opening their own shop, they would make more just working with me. And then I want to document how I did it, so that other people don't have to have it as hard as I did. Right? So that's kind of like a little bit of background. There's a lot more to it than that, but I just wanted you guys to get a little bit of chance to kind of get to know my background and kind of the way I think. Like, I was never in this thing to be a barber. Like, that was just a means to an end for me. Like, I can cut hair, I still do, but it's not like why I opened a shop. You know, like, some people open a barber shop just so that they can not have to pay anybody, booth rent or commission or whatever. That was the goal for me from the beginning. I'm also, like, an extreme introvert, so I think that in a way was an advantage for me, because I started to look for ways to get the word out about the business that had nothing to do with going down the street and passing out business cards and handing out flyers like a lot of people talk about. I didn't want to do that shit, you know? So I was like, well, if I don't do that, I have to get the word out somehow. So I guess I'm going to focus on Google and running ads. And turns out that's a very effective way of growing your business. Where if I was an extrovert and I had no problem going up to people handing out business cards, I don't know that I would have built the business. Maybe I would have. I don't know that I would have gotten to this point, though. So whether you're an introvert, extrovert, I think you use what you have. And in my case, it turned out to be a superpower. The fact that I didn't want to go hand out business cards and do door hangers and flyers. Like, I was like, I need to find another way, because I don't want to do that shit. And it turns out I did. And that's one of the most effective, high leverage ways of actually growing your business, is actually doing things that reach many people at once, versus the one-to-one, which that can work too. But that's how I did it, So yeah. So we had some questions come up in the community, but let me see. I got some stuff in the chat. If you guys have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, and I'm going to go through the questions in the chat and also in the community. That we had some questions pop up earlier. I have a free community, just so you guys know. It's called the Barber Mastermind, Let me share my screen so you guys can see. I don't know, Instagram, if you can see this. If you're on YouTube, you should be able to see my whole screen. There we go. Yeah, so this is called the Barber Mastermind. The link to join is in my bio. It's 100% free to be in this group. And these are the questions that came up just today. So I thought I could go through some of those. But before I do that, Kim, let's see. Kim wants to know, do you give your barbers a shampoo? Do most of your barbers give a shampoo, conditioner, scalp treatment? Scalp? No. We basically, so most of our services come from haircuts and beard trims. Like 80, it's more than 80%, probably 85% or 90% of our services, of our revenue comes from just haircuts and beard trims. Everything else that we offer is that last like 15 to 20%. So like shampoos, waxing, head shaves, face shaves. So we do shampoos. We don't do scalp treatments yet. It's definitely one of those things I've been looking into. But also the thing is, like, you have to, this is just my opinion and based on what I've seen and what I've personally experienced. Most of your revenue, probably no matter what you do, is going to come from like 80% of your revenue is probably going to come from like one or two of your services, no matter what you add, right? So you can add whatever you want, but when you add new services, it also adds complexity to your business because you have to, train people as a barbershop owner. You have to train people on this new thing. You have to have the new supplies. And then most people might not even like book it, So I think that some of the biggest, if you just look at the biggest businesses in our industry, like a lot of them are really, really simple. They don't offer like 10,000 different services, I'm not saying you have to do that. Like, I tend to talk about the things that big businesses do, like big barbershops and big salon chains, because that's my goal. Now, if you're just by yourself in a suite or you work for somebody else, then you have a little bit more options, But when you're trying to scale, like I am, to get to 100 locations, you have to think simple, right? Because simple is easier to scale, right? So I tend to think about that and it's trying to walk this line between leaving money on the table and offering new things and new services, but also trying to keep the business simple, right? Because the business is just naturally going to get more complicated over time as it grows anyways. So you don't have to try that hard. You don't have to try to make it more complicated by adding new things. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but as a barbershop owner, that's how I think. Like, I'm gonna try to keep it as simple as possible because I already know without doing anything else, just by the business growing, it's gonna get more complicated. So no, we don't do scalp treatments, but we do shampoo and conditioner if the client wants it. All right, that's the thing. And then what's my favorite book behind me? They're all really good. That's why I buy them, because the books behind me probably represent like 10% of all of the books that I've read. I started reading books, like seriously reading. I'm talking like 2 books a week back when I was in barber school, 2013, because I knew I was going to be a barbershop owner one day. I'm like, I need to learn this before I open a barbershop. So I was reading everything. So I guess I don't have a favorite book behind me, but one of the books that I mention a lot, that's I think every barber should read, is let's see, this one right here, How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you haven't read this book, I think it's maybe $20, but if you're struggling with retaining clients, I don't know of a better investment, because we're in a people business. So if people don't want to come back, and assuming your skill level is where it should be, then it's probably some other factor. There's something happening in the chair that, and the cool thing is this is easy. Like, this book is really short. less than 300 pages. So maybe it'll take you a month if you're reading it really slow. I tend to read books through Audible, so I don't, read the physical book. I buy the book if it's really good, because I'm like, this is so good that I want a physical copy of it so that I can reference it. So all the books that are behind me, most of them, I bought because I thought like either it wasn't on Audible and I really wanted to read it, or I thought that was so good that I want to have it as like in my library so I can refer to it in the future. So this is the book. This is not necessarily my favorite, but this is one of the ones that I recommend the most. Another good one is let's see. Oh, there's so many. There's so many. It's up there, but the E Myth, the letter E. Let's see. Here it is. Right here. Now, I will say, when it comes to this book, I made a huge mistake in that, and I think that it wasn't the author's fault, of course, but when it comes to this book in particular, this book makes you realize that you need to run your business like a franchise, basically. Even if the goal is never to franchise, it's just so that it can run without you as a business owner. But I took that like really, really literally in the beginning, and I thought that there was something wrong with me because I was in the business cutting hair. And what I didn't realize at the time, and I made so many mistakes with this, I tried to retire from cutting hair like 4 times. Is that like there's a time to do that, right? That's why I came up with this saying, good idea, wrong time, because it's not necessarily a bad idea for the barbershop owner to stop cutting hair, but there is a bad time, right? If you have, 8 chairs in your shop and you only have 2 other barbers besides you as the owner, probably not the right time to stop cutting hair, right? You need to make money, right? So you do whatever it takes. Your job as the business owner, your job is to do whatever the business requires. That's kind of like one of the major lessons I've learned in the last couple of years. It's basically, you're not above anything as a business owner. Your job is to do whatever the business needs. So if you need to scrub the toilets, then that's your job right now. If you need to cut hair, that's your job right now. If you need to answer phones and sweep hair and help your barbers check out their clients, that's what you do, right? And only when you can hire somebody else to take over that role so that it frees you up to do something that's a higher leverage skill, then maybe it makes sense for you to stop, right? So right now I probably have enough. I probably have enough barber to where I could stop, but I'm not going to. Not until it gets to the point where it literally doesn't make sense for me to cut hair anymore, right? So I think the tipping point right now is going to be one of 2 things for me to stop cutting hair. Is either there's somebody that can work full-time out of my chair, so that's just a simple math problem. Like I work 3 days a week, part-time, 15 hours a week total, every other week. So if somebody can take my chair and work full-time, 30, 40 hours and produce more revenue than me, then that makes perfect sense for me to stop, right? Or if there's another skill or another thing that I can use that time for to grow the business that makes more than me cutting hair, then it makes sense for me to stop. If it doesn't meet those 2 conditions, then for me it's not time yet. So yeah, let me answer this question here. So your channel's so good, so tired of regular barber channels. There's finally a business channel that I follow. Well, that's why I do it, man. Yeah, to be honest, like I was looking for barber business shit like on YouTube and on the internet since 2014. When I first got into this industry, I was looking for this stuff, the stuff that I put out there, right? And I was so fucking frustrated because I'm like, everybody's just talking about cutting hair. I need to know how to grow my business. I need to know how to get new clients. I need to know how to increase my average ticket. I need to know how to increase retention. I need to know how to scale multiple locations. And everybody was just talking about cutting hair. I'm like, man. And that's why I kind of love where we're at now in this industry, because there's a lot more people talking about business stuff. Now I think you just need to be, now you have enough people where you can listen to, but you just have to be careful who you listen to, because now there's like, okay, so this guy's trying to sell me this thing and this guy's trying to sell me this thing. Which one do I listen to? And I think for that, you just got to look at what have they done, you know? Because a lot of people can say good things on a 60-second or 30-second clip on social media, but if you look at their resume, I don't know that it holds up, right? So, and it also depends on your goal. Like if your goal is to have a suite, then listen to the people that have, their own suites. My advice might not be as relevant for you, because my goal was never to own a suite. I wanted to have a business, like where I didn't have to be there and it still goes, right? I can break my arm, I can break my leg, I can take a vacation for a month and come back and still doing fine, right? That to me that's a business, Somebody would buy that from me, right? Where I don't know that, like, I've heard of anybody sell a suite. Like, what are they buying? Maybe some phone numbers, but like you're basically just self-employed and working by yourself, which is nothing wrong with that. That was just never my goal, right? But that's why I started doing this, right? I started making content because this is the kind of stuff, I say it in almost every call, but it's true. This is the kind of stuff that I wish I had. And I get nothing from this. Like, I do have a paid community where I do coaching, but honestly, like, I would make more just cutting hair. Like, for as cheap as my community costs, like I would just make a lot more just cutting hair than what I charge for being in my paid community. But I do it to give back, and because the only way I think that people will take it seriously is if they are paying for it. Like, I do have a free community for people that can't afford my paid stuff, that's why it's there. But I feel like only the people that are serious actually will go and join the paid group, because now there's actually a cost, because I've actually given people books, right? I've given people books and I realize, like, they don't read them. I've spent over $20,000 on courses, right? And I love my team. So I hope if they're listening, they don't take this the wrong way. But I've just given all of those courses to my team. And as far as I'm aware, nobody has watched them. $20,000 worth of courses. And I keep adding more, because if I buy a course, like I give it to my team. Nobody's watched it. You know why? It's because they didn't have to give up anything to get it. So I think if you're really serious about something, like, you have to sacrifice something, right? Like, you have to spend your time or spend your money. But I've seen that consistent. I used to do free coaching, that's how I got started. And I just coach people for free and nobody would show up to the calls. I'm like, okay, so it's only if there's something to lose that they will actually take advantage of it. That makes sense, right? Anyways, thank you, Gold Rush Bell. I do this for you. It also helps me and makes me better, right? Because you guys ask me questions that sometimes make me think, right? And I'm learning from you, I think, just as much, if not more, than y'all learn from me. So thank you. Why did I choose Jacksonville? I mean, Jacksonville kind of chose me. This is just where I ended up. I'll just say that. Yeah, I have commitments here that make it so I'll probably never leave, right? Especially now with the business. But I didn't choose Jacksonville specifically, as far as, like, out of all the places I could live. I did not specifically choose, but I think it was, I don't know if I believe in fate, but any other city would have been way harder. Like, Jacksonville is like a big, small town, and other cities, like I was just in Miami over last week. The competition down there is way tougher. So I don't know that if I would have, maybe I could have made it work if I lived in Miami or Tampa, But Jacksonville, the competition, at least when I was getting started, was nowhere near what I think the other cities were. So, but I don't think that that's an excuse. Like I think that you can make, no matter where you are, no matter what's your situation, you can make anything work. That's just where I happen to end up, right? So, what's a good profit margin for a barbershop? I mean, I think most barbershops and salons, I think the industry average is like 5% or less. So, but honestly, like you want to shoot for 10, 20% or more, like especially if your goal is to grow. So it depends on your goal too. So there's really two types of goals, I think, when it comes to owning a business, and neither one is wrong. One is like this is basically just like a lifestyle business. Like you're treating this business like an ATM. Like I just want to have enough to live my life comfortably. I don't want to grow. I don't want to have any headaches. This is just to support me, right? And for a long time, like that's how I actually treated my business. But if your goal is to grow, right, then you need to be way more profitable, because you need to have enough to reinvest back in the business to grow. So you want to be on the higher end of that spectrum. And I think that, this is going to maybe give me some hate for saying this, but like it's very hard to grow if you pay, your barbers like 50, 60, 70% commission because there's no profit left over. That might work when you're like one or two locations, but I challenge you guys to find me a barbershop chain or salon chain that has more than 100 locations that pays their people that much and their employees, right? Because that's another thing. Like, some people like to 1099 their people, and if they're doing it the legal way, then there's nothing wrong with that. But it's when you call people a 1099 contractor, but treat them like an employee, that's where I think, obviously that's against the law, but some people don't agree with me there. But I think that you want to shoot for as much profit as possible because if you grow, it's going to eat into that, right? Because like you have to hire people that don't make you money. So like accountants, managers, receptionists, cleaning crews, just as an example, right? Like this is how like you could start off with maybe with one location or two locations or just a few. Like that's the most profitable your business will ever be, because as you grow, the profit, the margin is going to shrink. And some of the biggest industries, if you look at like the S&P 500, right? For these publicly traded companies, some of them, their profit's like 5%. It's just because it's very, very difficult to get that big and also be super profitable. So I think you want to, while your business is small, if the goal is to grow, try to make the business as profitable as possible, because that profit margin, maybe you started with 20. If you open a second one, I mean, it's going to shrink. If you open a third, it might shrink even more. Now, there's other things that you can do that do become more profitable as you scale. Like if you can buy things in bulk now because you have multiple locations or a larger team, that's where you can get some savings there and find some profit. But in general, I think our business is a lot less profitable than a lot of people realize. I think if you're in between 10 and 20%, you're doing okay, right? If you're doing more than that, you're doing something right, or I don't know, you're doing something illegal. but yeah, you want to shoot for something like, I want to say minimum 10 to 20%. Less than 10, then you might have some work to do. So hopefully does that help you? That makes sense? What are your thoughts on the standards in the barber industry? I don't know that there is standards. I mean, besides sanitation. I don't know. I don't know. What do you mean by that? Because the standards, I think, are set by the owner or by the manager, the person in charge. And so I think that's in some ways that's an advantage, right? Because it's not that hard. It's not that hard to compete nowadays. You just have to like show up on time, right? Be reliable, do a good haircut, do it consistently, and try to be on time. If you take appointments, try to be on time. So I think that compared to other industries, yeah, regulatory, professionalism, customer service. Well, I can't speak for like the whole industry. And, I thought about this the other day that like, I think that a lot of the barbers that I talk to just happen to be in like pain, right? Like either in the group, they're trying to learn how to make more money, they're trying to learn how to grow, or they're trying to come work for me. So from my experience though, like the standards are pretty low in our industry. Um, but I think that's an advantage if you are a barber that's new to this industry because it's just not that hard to compete. Like you just have to show up. You show up for work your ass off, and you can win. Like I'm not in a small city. I'm actually in the largest city in the US in terms of land area. And somehow, in less than 10 years, we were able to go from not even existing, just a thought in my brain, to being the number one barbershop in the entire city. Um, and I didn't do anything special. Like we do some things that nobody else in our area has ever done before. But like I don't think I've ever had like an original thought, to be honest. Like a lot of the stuff that has been innovative in our business has just have been ideas that I've just borrowed from another barbershop in a different city or salon in a different city or from a totally different industry. Because that's another thing. You guys don't have to just be limited to like learning from other barbers. Like I highly recommend you learn from the salon world, from really any service-based business. I think you can learn a lot from. But I think that in some ways the standard being low um, is an advantage. It can help you if you are able to rise above that, right? And there's always going to be winners and losers in business. It's not fair. It's not meant to be, you know. And that's why the 1%, the top 10% are always going to make the most money. Like probably 20% of the 80-20 rule, 20% of the barbershops in your city are probably getting 80% of the clients. And it's not that complicated. Clients just want a good haircut, and they want you to be reliable, and they want you to be there when they show up and be on time for the appointments, and they want the same haircut every single time. This is why franchises I think are a thing, because they might not have the best food. Like Chick-fil-A might not have the best food, but it's the same every time, no matter what city you go to. And that's what clients want. And if that wasn't true, then franchises wouldn't be a thing. Big corporations wouldn't be a thing. We'd all just be supporting small businesses, right? But that's not a thing. People want consistency. So if you want to stand out in this business, it's not easy, but it's simple. Like just show up, be reliable, do some good haircuts, follow the law, take care of your clients, and your business will grow. It's just not going to happen overnight. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. All right, so with our last bit of time, I just wanted to go through our community and just answer any quick questions. So Miguel, welcome to the group. Syed, welcome to the group. Let's see, so Angie, I think, had a question earlier about tips for cutting coiled hair. Well, I think this is a good tip just in general, but if you're cutting somebody's hair that you're not familiar with, one of the things I learned when I was new to the barber industry was whatever they ask for, whether it's a high fade or medium fade, I'm going to give them a low fade. At least that's how I'm going to start, right? Because if you're new to cutting hair, or you've never cut this guy's hair before, then I would recommend you start with a low fade, regardless of what they ask for, and then see how they like it, right? Because if you're new, you might end up cutting into your guide and raising the fade higher anyways. So what started as a low fade might end up turning into a high fade. Like that was the case with me. So that would be my tip for just no matter what type of hair. Like if you've never cut this person's hair before, or this is a hair texture you're not familiar with, I would start it as a low fade, and then finish the cut, see how they like it. And if it ends up being a true low fade and they want you to take it higher, then that's easy to do. But you can't take a high fade and turn it into a low fade. But you can take a low fade and turn it into a high fade. And another thing is just like a brush. Like it sounds super simple, but like I see a lot of people, anytime I'm doing less than I think it's a 2 or a 1.5 guard, there's a brush in my hand because it keeps your hair, the hair clean, keeps your canvas clean. And with curly hair, like the hair moves, right? So you cut it and it shifts up. So the brush puts it back down. So you get a more even cut that way. So I think that hopefully that helps you. But that's just kind of my thoughts when it comes to just cutting hair in general. If you guys are in this community, which the link to this is in my bio, and you want to share, your work, you do what this guy did. Share photos. This is some good work. I like it. Nice. But if you want to share a video, then what I would recommend is that you share the link. Like, because when you share like a video link or share a video, it looks like this. And I would be able to see this if I download it onto my computer or my phone. I just don't want to do that. So if you want people to actually look at your stuff and get some followers potentially from it, then share it to your social media or to YouTube and actually put the link in the group, right? Because they can just tap on it, it opens it up, and they can see your video, and you might get a follower from it. So, all right. So we got a lot of activity this week in the community. I think we got most of the questions answered here. This one was one that I thought was kind of sad, but hopefully she's figuring it out. But the idea is, I don't know why like an owner would be like on you about getting clients if you're a renter. I mean, I think that's your responsibility for sure. But I don't know how he or they benefit from it. But just in general, when it comes to marketing, you either have to spend time or money. Like, unless you have a really, really good reputation, clients aren't just going to come in. Like, they're not. You have to convince them to come in. So you have to either spend time. So, you can go and hand out business cards or flyers. I never did that. Or you can post on social media, which works. It's just going to take a long time. You can reach out to people one-on-one through social media or post in groups. Or you can, if none of that is working for you, or you're in a hurry, or you've got some money to spend, then I think the faster way to do it would be to run ads, which is why that's one of the newest courses that I just added to my community, which is how to run ads on Meta, which Meta is Facebook and Instagram. That's my personal favorite way. That and Google, like getting Google reviews. Now Google reviews is not going to fill your chair today, but it's like an investment. Like it will continue to pay you back over and over again, and especially if you're like us and you're like the top in the city, you're going to get like the majority of the new clients, right? Because most people just want to go to the best. And as long as you're convenient, you're within driving distance, you're going to get the majority of the clients in your area if you're at the top of Google. And if you're in somebody else's shop, you can still use Google to your advantage. You just want to share their link. When you trying to get Google reviews, take the owner of your shop's link and share it and say, hey, can you write me a review? Can you put my name in it? And, this is in my Google course, in my paid group, but pictures are very powerful. So if somebody writes a review for you and also puts a picture with their review and also makes their review more than, I think it's 200 words, and also has some keywords in the review that somebody would type into Google, it supercharges the review. Like, because I don't know if you guys have noticed, you can test my knowledge on this, but every time I go to Google Maps and look at a business's reviews, the default setting is most relevant. So I had this thought a few months ago, like, what does that mean, most relevant? And I researched it by Googling it. And it turns out that not all reviews are created equal. So if you want to not just get reviews, but increase the quality of your reviews, get people to write your review, get them to add a picture, and get them to write something besides just tapping 5 stars, right? And it will be even better because Google is basically just wants real reviews. Like so they reward that. You know, if they think this review is real, written by a real client, a real person, it's gonna rank higher in Google. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's just the basics. So my favorite ways of getting clients are Google and paid ads. But you can just sit there and just DM people all day. And if you don't have money, that's the way I would recommend. So I think that we are going to wrap up the call for today. I got to go to the shop, cut some hair. Thank you guys for joining me. If you're not in my group already, the link to my free Barber Mastermind group is in my bio, wherever you're watching this. If you want to join my paid group for barbershop owners and for aspiring barbershop owners that has all the courses that I mentioned in this call and a lot more, the link to that's also in my bio. I will see you guys next week. Have a good one.